Welcome back to the CSP Elite Baseball Development Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Cressey, and this is another edition of Pinch Hit Friday. We actually have the next season of true episodes starting off with episode 200 on this upcoming Tuesday. But in the meantime, we've got some quick hit content here just for a Friday afternoon. And I wanted to talk about in-season training because a lot of folks down here in Florida are getting rolling with the season, whereas in a lot of other parts of the country, they're still shoveling snow off the fields and aren't anticipating starting up for a couple months. But with that said, I do look at in-season training a little bit differently than I did in years past. So I thought this might be a good time to kind of highlight some key competencies that I think have sustained over the test of time, but I think also, in a few different ways that I may be looking at things now. The first thing, and something that's consistent with my methodology for a really long time, is the most important thing you can consider with respect to in-season training is that it's not just lifting, right? Lifting is part of it. Enhancing strength, preserving those strength qualities is super important. But every time you go in to train, it's also, basically the bait to get you to do some mobility work, to do some foam rolling, to work on arm care, to throw the med balls. So I always try to get past the idea of just doing some strength stuff. Yes, that's probably the single most important part in terms of preserving force production capabilities and the endocrine benefits and, immunoenhancing elements. All that stuff is really, really important. It comes with the strength side of things, but it's always going to force athletes to go through a thorough mobility warm up, do a little bit of foam rolling, do some positional breathing, do some end range, external rotation control stuff. I think all that is really, really important. So that's the first point, is realize that in-season training is not just about lifting. The second thing I'll say is that you need to consider where you are on this absolute speed to absolute strength continuum. I've talked about this a lot in the past. I've got a lengthy YouTube video from probably all the way back in 2009 about it. But in the context of, a baseball player, absolute strength, the far right of the continuum would be lifting weights in a gym, right? And then absolute speed would be what you do with your body weight, be running the bases, be throwing a very light implement, a 5-ounce baseball, swinging a light bat. All these different things are happening with lots and lots of velocity, but not necessarily a whole lot of really, really high load, right? So what I always tell athletes is your in-season training should kind of shift away from what you're doing the most in your sport. So once you get in season, you're going to spend a lot of time on this absolute speed end of this continuum. So it just means that once you get to this in-season training dynamic, you've got to spend more time to the right, preserving maximal strength. And it might be as simple as doing 2 sets of 4 on your main exercise and mixing in some good assistant stuff to get where you need to be. But what I also talk about is, remember that absolute strength might be the far right of the continuum, but there is kind of a strength speed component that you can probably benefit from training. Maybe it's some kettlebell jump squats, or maybe it's some kind of band resisted jump. Maybe it's throwing the med balls, something that has just a little bit of resistance, that shifts you just a little bit more towards this force end of the curve, and really still try to move it at great velocities. I think that's really, really important, in particular for athletes who are naturally very strong. It's a good way to train at different points along that strength speed continuum. I think it's also probably a good move for more untrained athletes who still have a big window of adaptation ahead of them that can really benefit from training a lot of different qualities in the same session. So, that's number 2. Consider where you are on the absolute speed to absolute strength continuum and train accordingly, including rotational, power development. Number 3, remember that if you're weak, young, detrained, the in-season period is not just a time to cut back and not do very much. It's actually a time when you can still try to get stronger. I can't tell you how many times we've looked at an athlete on the force plates going into the season, and they come in and they're good about just lifting twice a week. And just because they're 15, 16 years old, they don't have a whole lot of experience under their belt. All those force production qualities still improve during the season. So the goal as a young athlete, in the early teenage years, is to have steady linear progress on all of those qualities, whether you're in season or off season. You just have such a big window of adaptation that if you train regularly, you should still be able to get stronger and make progress. So that's number 3. If you're weak / detrained, make sure that you're looking at it almost as a pseudo off-season program where you are still developing. Number 4, remember that this is not just about doing bands you need to add some load, right? I think often what happens, I joke that in the tennis community, nobody says they have a strength and conditioning coach. They all have fitness coaches. And the reason they have fitness coaches is because everyone likes to just do a little bit of stuff on the court, right? They need to, they like to attach a band to a fence, or they like to do some resisted running or some kind of drills that are convenient. They like to bring a kettlebell out to the court. And the truth is that load is an important teacher, right? We can use it not just to add strength, but we can also use it to develop some positional awareness and all that stuff. So when I talk about in-season training, I think it's actually very important to get athletes away from the field, because the field is very reductionist. You often see just a band rigged up against a fence, and that's great for a warm up pregame, and just to mix in a little bit of blood flow and stuff like that. But we're actually trying to create some kind of adaptation. We need to have the right equipment to have some kind of overload. So there's certainly a lot of stuff you can do outside in a convenient way, but at the end of the day, I am a firm believer in getting athletes into the gym and challenging them. Don't just do a bunch of band exercise. Add load to things, including for your arm care. I love manual resistance exercises, cables, dumbbells. All that stuff is really, really helpful. So make sure you take advantage of the equipment that can really help your cause. And then, my fifth thing I want to highlight, the last but certainly not least, is just remember that the better your off season and overall career experience in the weight room is, the less you're going to do in season, and that's what you're going to need to do in season. You don't want to waste your bullets in the wrong places. But if you're an athlete that's 35, 36, 37 years old, and you've had a consistent off-season routine, you've built this massive foundation of strength, you can actually get away with doing a lot less in season. Usually your in-season initiatives are going to be more about preserving power production capabilities, optimizing mobility, really paying attention to your recovery capacity and taking advantage of that. Versus if you're a 20-year-old athlete that's still building that foundation, you can do a little bit more in season. But with that said, I always joke that the best way to avoid an in-season fatigue problem is to develop a lot of work capacity in the off season. It's to put in a really, really strong foundation. And I think a lot of times when we see athletes who are struggling to, carry out in-season training, whether they feel like they're always too tired for it, or it beats them up too much, or it makes them too sore, it's typically because they haven't built a strong enough foundation in the off season. So those are ones that you actually backtrack, to kind of look back to number, point number 3. If you're weak or detrained, you can still get stronger. Those are the athletes that you have to be, tactful about how you do it, but you can build some capacity with them in the in-season period. I'm always surprised at how even some of the best athletes on the planet can make improvements in season, just compared to what they did in the off season. So don't ever rule out the possibility of adaptation, but at the same time, if you have an athlete that's hyper adapted, in other words, they've put in a great foundation in the off season, once the in-season rolls around, it's time to step back, get out of the way, and let them show off the fitness that they've built during those other times of year when there's not as much baseball or any sport taking place. So hopefully these 5 tips, help the cause. It's not just lifting, it's also other stuff, mobility work, foam rolling. You got to know where you are in this absolute speed to absolute strength continuum. If you're detrained, make some progress. Make sure you implement, different pieces of equipment that can, create overload adaptation. And last but not least, take care of your off seasons, and your in seasons are a lot easier. Thanks for listening. This episode is brought to you by AG1, the most comprehensive NSF certified for sport daily nutritional supplement I've ever tried. With so many stressors in life, it can be difficult to maintain effective nutritional habits and give our bodies the nutrients they need to thrive. As a father of 3 young kids and a co-founder of multiple businesses in multiple states, on top of still being an avid exerciser, I know that busy schedules can really take their toll on us. Whether it's poor sleep, exercise or life stressors, environmental factors, or simply not eating enough of the right foods, we can often wind up deficient nutritionally. This is where AG1 can really help. It's a game-changing nutritional insurance policy. They simplify the logistics of getting optimal nutrition on a daily basis by giving you just one thing with all the best things. That's why I use it daily, as do several of my family members, and we recommend it to a lot of our top athletes. One scoop of AG1 contains 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients that work together to fill the nutritional gaps in your diet to support energy, focus, digestion, and recovery. And this can all happen for less than $3 per day and without taking multiple products. While most nutritional supplements come to market and stay stagnant, AG1 continues to obsessively improve this one holistic formula based on the latest research, producing over 50 improvements in the last decade alone. They invest in the most absorbable and natural source of each ingredient and go above and beyond in third-party testing to ensure their customers continue to receive the highest quality and best tasting nutrition happen on the planet. Whether you're keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, it'll work for you, and it contains less than 1 gram of sugar per serving. They put 75 ingredients through the rigorous NSF certification test to come up with a safe formula that's trusted by some of the world's top athletes, including many of our own at Cressey Sports Performance. Right now, AG1 is giving our listeners a special offer of 10 free travel packets with their first purchase. Just head to drinkag1.com/Cressey and claim this special offer. These travel packets are perfect for supporting your immune system, energy, and gut health while you're traveling for games, training, or simply on the go. They can be great counterbalance to the less than ideal on-the-road food options that are out there for a lot of our traveling baseball players. So if you want to bridge the gap between deficient and optimal and give yourself the best chance of getting nutrient diversity, head to drinkag1.com/Cressey to get 10 free travel packets with your first purchase. Again, that's drinkag1.com/Cressey, Cressey. You won't regret it.